Failure. It's a word that sends shivers down the spine of many. It's a word that carries with it the weight of our deepest fears, our insecurities, and our doubts. It's something that many of us avoid at all costs, believing that to fail is to lose, to be less than, to be unworthy. We fear failure because it represents defeat, or so we've been conditioned to think. But what if I told you that failure is not the enemy? What if I told you that failure is not something to run from, but something to embrace? What if I told you that failure is, in fact, the very thing that can propel you toward success? Today, I want to talk to you about why you shouldn't fear failure, and how, instead of avoiding it, you should welcome it as a necessary and even beautiful part of your journey. Because failure, when viewed through the right lens, isn't a setback. It's a stepping stone. It's an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to rise even higher than before. The fear of failure has been ingrained in us from a young age. It's in our schooling system, where mistakes are often penalized, where we are taught to avoid failure in order to succeed. But the truth is, the most successful and influential people in history didn't avoid failure. They leaned into it. They embraced it, learned from it, and allowed it to be a powerful force that shaped their success. If you think about the people you admire most, the ones who have achieved great things, you'll find that their journeys weren't without failure. In fact, most of them experienced failure at some point. Think about Thomas Edison, who failed thousands of times before he invented the light bulb, or Walt Disney, who was fired from a newspaper job because he was told he lacked imagination. What if they had given up after their first failure? What if they had allowed their fear of failure to hold them back? The world would be a very different place today. They didn't fear failure. They embraced it. And because of that, they changed the world. When we fear failure, we limit ourselves. We place boundaries around what we're capable of, telling ourselves that failure is something that should be avoided at all costs. But in reality, failure is a natural part of growth. It's an essential part of the process that allows us to refine our skills, our thinking, and our strategies. Failure doesn't define us. It's simply feedback. Feedback that tells us what's working and what's not, what needs to be adjusted, and what needs to be improved. When we remove the stigma around failure and begin to see it as a learning experience rather than a catastrophe, we open ourselves up to endless possibilities. One of the main reasons we fear failure is because we equate it with rejection. We fear that if we fail, we will be rejected by others, that we'll be judged, criticized, or even ridiculed. The fear of what others might think can be paralyzing, and it can keep us stuck in a place of inaction. But here's the truth. People are more focused on their own lives and struggles than they are on your failures. The fear of judgment is often far worse than the reality of it. When you fail, it doesn't mean that you are less than. It just means that you are human. It means that you are taking risks and putting yourself out there, and that is something to be proud of. And the reality is, even the most successful people experience failure. Look at Steve Jobs, for example. He was famously fired from Apple, the very company he founded. Imagine the blow to his ego, the sting of rejection. But did he let that stop him? No. He went on to create Pixar and later returned to Apple, transforming it into one of the most valuable companies in the world. If he had allowed his fear of failure to paralyze him, we wouldn't have the technology we have today. Jobs didn't fear failure. He used it as fuel to create something even bigger and more impactful. Another reason we fear failure is because we think that failing means we are not good enough. We tie our sense of self-worth to our success. And when we fail, it feels like a direct reflection of our abilities, our intelligence, and our potential. But failure does not define your worth. It's simply a part of the process. Just because you fail doesn't mean you are a failure. In fact, some of the most successful people have experienced the greatest failures. It's not the failure that matters. It's how you respond to it that defines you. You have the power to choose how you view failure and how you use it to move forward. The truth is, failure is often the best teacher. It's the lessons learned from failure that allow us to grow and improve. Failure teaches us resilience, perseverance, and adaptability. It helps us build mental toughness and prepares us for future challenges. Every time we fail and pick ourselves back up, we become stronger. We gain new insights, new perspectives, and new strategies for success. Failure is not a roadblock, it's a stepping stone to greatness. So how do we embrace failure instead of fearing it? The first step is to change our mindset. Instead of seeing failure as something to avoid, we need to see it as an opportunity to grow. Failure is not something that happens to us, it's something that happens for us. It's a chance to learn, to adapt, and to try again. Instead of asking ourselves, what if I fail, we should ask, what can I learn from this experience? The more we embrace this mindset, the less fear we will feel when failure comes knocking at our door. Another important step is to detach your self-worth from your success. You are not your achievements. You are not defined by your failures. Your worth comes from within, from who you are as a person, not from what you accomplish. This doesn't mean that success isn't important or that you shouldn't strive to do your best. It simply means that you need to recognize that failure is just a part of the journey, not a reflection of who you are. It's also important to reframe failure in a way that makes it easier to embrace. Instead of seeing failure as a final destination, see it as a part of the process. Every successful person has failed at some point. Failure is a sign that you're pushing yourself, that you're taking risks, that you're striving for something greater. When you fail, it means you're growing. It means you're stepping out of your comfort zone, and that is something to be celebrated, not feared. One of the biggest barriers to embracing failure is the fear of judgment from others. But here's the truth. The people who are truly successful aren't the ones who avoid failure at all costs. They are the ones who fail and keep going. They are the ones who fail publicly, fail often, and fail big. And they do so because they understand that failure is a necessary part of success. When you stop fearing judgment and start focusing on your own growth, you'll realize that failure is nothing to be ashamed of. In order to embrace failure, it's also important to practice self-compassion. When you fail, be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up or dwell on the mistakes you've made. Instead, acknowledge that you did your best and that you're learning. Failure isn't a reflection of your character. It's simply a part of the process. Treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer a friend who is going through a tough time. The more compassion you show yourself, the easier it will be to bounce back from failure and keep moving forward. Another powerful way to embrace failure is to celebrate your failures. This might sound counterintuitive, but hear me out. Every time you fail, you're one step closer to success. Each failure is a lesson, a chance to grow, and an opportunity to refine your approach. When you can look at failure as a positive force that is shaping you and preparing you for greater things, you'll begin to see it in a whole new light. Celebrate your failures because they are a sign of progress, not defeat. Finally, remember that failure is not permanent. It's a temporary setback, not a life sentence. Just because you failed today doesn't mean you'll fail forever. Every great success story is filled with failures, but those failures don't define the person. They shape them. They make them stronger, wiser, and more resilient. And you are no different. The fact that you failed means you're still in the game, still learning, and still growing. So don't fear failure. Embrace it. Because in doing so, you are opening the door to your greatest potential. You are telling the world that you are willing to risk, to grow, and to become everything you're meant to be. So go out there, take risks, make mistakes, and fail forward, because the only true failure is the failure to try.